It's a great pleasure and honor to be here today. Let me just, silence my mobile just a moment. So it's a very, very important topic, and I would like to express my appreciation to Dr. Nuthan for, her commitment to rediscover and propagate our ancient knowledge system in all its totality, because today we see that Ayurveda is getting reduced to, it's getting over medicalized, and Ayurveda deals with life in all its totality. It's actually also a moksha shastra. As you can see, the Sharirasthana of Charaka Samhita is really pinpointing us that this is the ultimate goal of life. So health as a means to a higher end, that is the focus of Ayurveda. And so linking Ayurveda also to this great Chaturmasya Vrata, and showing how Ayurveda lays the foundation for yoga, and then yoga takes us to that highest level of moksha. It's a very apt topic, and I am very happy to see that there are a lot of people interested. I don't know if everybody has an Ayurvedic background, but many Ayurvedic physicians today do not want to go deeper into these philosophical aspects. So I think it's a great job. So great work that is being done. So linking Ayurveda and yoga together is also very, very important. Yes. And I think this is the irony today that people first get to know yoga and then only Ayurveda. Actually, it should have been the other way around. Yoga prepares you for Ayurveda. If you are already prepared by Ayurveda, then yoga becomes more complete. Uh, I would like to very carefully also mention that sometimes it's also dangerous to do yoga before adequate preparation. So because Ayurveda opens up your gross physical body, opens up the minute channels, and that is when you get into connection with your own prana, for which your inner body has to be already awakened and accessible. And that is exactly what Ayurveda does. Ayurveda takes you to that threshold of yoga, from where yoga becomes alive, and you move forward, and yoga takes you to moksha. So this in Charaka Samhita, it is fascinating. That is so beautifully put. When see, we are all living ultimately to overcome that sense of discomfort, which we call in Sanskrit as Vedana. We are pursuing so many things in life with the hope that all those objects that we acquire will help us to overcome our Vedana. So in Charaka Samhita, there is this question: when does this Vedana cease? Because Ayurveda considers this sense of discomfort itself as a disease. And in fact, that is what that English word also means, that state of disease. So when does this disease come to an end? Not when you are cold or cough or any physical symptom is relieved, but when deep inside we have that sense of fulfillment, that sense of, uh, comfort, which in Ayurveda we say health means being happy for no reason. That is Sukha Samjnagam Arogya. When you are happy and you don't find any reason for that, then you can say you are healthy. If you find there is a reason for your happiness, then something is wrong, because disease will soon visit you. So Sukha Samjnagam Arogya, that is the Sukha that we need. And Charaka Samhita Sharirasthana tells this so explicitly. Yoge mokshe cha sarvasam vedananam avartanam. Only in the state of yoga and moksha you can achieve this state of ease, where you are happy just because you are, just because we exist. We don't need to find a reason to be happy. Only in the state of yoga and in moksha. Mokshe nivrittir nishchesha. Moksha is a state in which there is a complete achievement of that state of bliss, that absence of any sorrow. Yogo moksha pravartaka. Yoga is actually triggering this whole journey towards moksha. So human life is a very long journey. You know, we are trapped between two worlds. So Charaka Samhita and the Sharirasthana of Charaka Samhita gives us a very, very comprehensive framework and perspective in which, we can plan the journey of our life so that we find the final destination. I mean, most of us live our lives without even knowing it is a journey. We do not know where we have to go. The first and foremost thing that we need to know is have this roadmap of our life. So Ayurveda tells us what is the final destination and where we stand. So these are two important things that we need to know before we can start living our lives. Many people say moksha is the goal, but what is the distance between where we are now and where our destination is? That is extremely important. So if you want to choose the right path, you must know what is your present location. So I think this Sadhguruji once nicely mentioned this is the GPS of life, the Guru positioning system. The Guru's positioning system or GPS. This is exactly what Ayurveda does to us. It tells you, see, this is the destination in your life. And all other destinations, which you think are destinations, are just points on the way. And it's okay. You can have those destinations also, but make sure that you have a final destination. And the final destination of everybody is the same. But the points on the way, we are all free to choose. We can spend even extra time if we want before we can go in a passenger train or in a express train. That's okay. That freedom is there. But Ayurveda is the knowledge of life. It guides us to the final destination of life and it informs us where we stand. So, one of the main things Ayurveda is like a mirror. Ayurveda is a mirror in which you can see yourself. And when you see yourself, you know where you are, what you are, and how our journey, even though the destination is the same, everybody's route map is different. We cannot follow another person's path. This complete individualization, our way is our own way. Nobody else can follow that path. They will fall into trouble. They will be lost. So when Ayurveda and yoga comes together, we discover this roadmap to the final destination in our life. The best way, the isukhena, drutena, nischayena. This is what we want in our life. Sukhena. Our task should be easy. If something is very, very difficult, we don't want to do it. Of course, these are great efforts required for us to reach our final destination. And that is why Shastra is there. Because if we were to attempt this on our own, we would be discouraged very soon. We will realize it's so difficult. So, Guru is somebody who makes what is difficult easy. Sukhen. The second thing is that if we were left to ourselves, like snoozing our alarms every day in the morning, we will never wake up. Given the choice, we would keep snoozing our alarms and go back to sleep. So we need the guidance of a guru to actually awaken us and push us forward. Drutena, fast, push us forward. It need not be one single person because the guru's hands are everywhere. What we need is an inner surrender, and the whole universe will become our guru. And Ayurveda tells us that this is the awakening that has to happen. You have to install this guru positioning system, this GPS system into our lives, first and foremost. And then sukhena, life's journey becomes sukham. It becomes dhrutam and nischayena. You can imagine if you get into a vehicle or an aircraft and you don't know whether it will really reach there safely to destination. That fear is also eliminated with the Guru, nischayena. So sukhena drutena nischayena, moving forward in the journey of life. That is the purpose of our Shastras. So it brings complete meaning, focus, direction in our lives. So Ayurveda interferes in that sense now. Once you embrace Ayurveda, then you are trapped because now it will take over. In the beginning, this may look like interference. Every aspect of your life is now under scrutiny because Ayurveda is the knowledge of life. If you go to an allopathic doctor, you can just tell, you just worry about my stomach problem. Other things are my private matters. I don't want any doctor to interfere. But if you go to an Ayurveda Vaidya, you are done for because now your life will be exposed. The goal of Ayurveda is to change our lives. We say hitamayu, sukhamayu. So this broad perspective is what makes Ayurveda unique and Ayurveda connected to yoga. And today I would like to link this whole concept of Sharirasthanam, which deals with how the body comes into existence and how that person, what is the purpose of that body, and through this embodied existence, what are we supposed to achieve in life? How is this also connected to Chaturmasya? Now, let us look at this. We are experiencing two worlds, the external world and the internal world. And do you know what is the meaning of the word Sukham? Anybody?
You may raise the hand so that we can unmute you if you want to talk, or you can write in the chat box.
Okay, there are already, yes, physical happiness, sweet, at ease. You know, there is a very great importance of knowing Sanskrit because if you learn words through their Sanskrit meaning, you can see your perceptions will be completely transformed. The word sukha cannot literally translate into happiness. If you say, what is happiness? We say it is happiness. What is that? We don't know. I mean, we cannot explain. But the word sukha is much more insightful because sukha means good space. So this is what we are trying to do our whole life. We are trying to make the space in which we exist good and comfortable. Otherwise, we say we want to always be in our comfort zone. So sukha means comfort zone. And Ayurveda, Charaka also tells elsewhere, sukhartha sarva bhudanam mata sarva pravataya. What everybody does every moment in her or his life is to make the space around us more comfortable, more comfortable, more comfortable. So much we are obsessed with searching for sukha in this way that at the slightest disturbance that happens to the space around us, we get disturbed. We have reached a point today where, you know, this disturbance can completely drive us crazy. We have become completely intolerant. You know, worldwide they are measuring happiness index. And some of the most prosperous countries, not always prosperous, but you know, definitely prosperity is part of this being happy, according to modern concept. Countries like Finland, Norway, the Scandinavian, you know, countries, they are considered to be very, very happy. But if you really analyze this, how strong or how stable is their happiness? You can see that people in this country are happy because the space around them is happy. Once those conditions are affected, okay, I don't mean to, you know, be critical about anything. I'm only trying to convey a fact. It is always nice that if you are able to create the external space, make it more comfortable, which is what our whole modern civilization is trying to do. You get up from your chair and your table moves automatically, your doors move. You look at the walls and the color changes to the color that you like. You say, hey, Google, and then, the Google does whatever you want it to do, or it could be Google, Alexa, or Siri. Everybody is competing there also to make our lives more and more comfortable. You reach the front of your home and looking at your face, the gate opens for you. The doors open, everything is so comfortable. Now machines are becoming more intelligent than us. So we are living a stupid life in an intelligent world. That is what is happening with the rise of artificial intelligence. As somebody asked, are you worried about the rise of artificial intelligence in the world? And that person answered, no, of course not. That's good. But I'm worried about the decline of human intelligence. So this is what, the search for comfort is leading us to. While there is nothing wrong, we need a balance. If the temperature rises beyond a limit, 50, 60 degrees outside, you cannot tell philosophy and sit comfortably. But that was also part of our tradition. We had this Panchagni, tapas. And in Himalayas, if you go, you will find saints there with just a loincloth sitting in the cold. This, learning how to be stable inside, even when the external environment is extremely challenging, was part of the old spiritual training. And by the practice of yoga, people were even able to withstand extremes in the external environment. So today, the whole human effort, civilization is focused on making our external space comfortable. Sukham. Sukham is a neutral word. It says it can mean your inner space or your outer space. You will realize that there is a limit to making the external space comfortable. It doesn't make always your inner space also as comfortable. You could be in a 5-star hotel, with all the air conditioning, all the comforts, and then still you might think of jumping out of the window and killing yourself. A lot of people today hang themselves in air-conditioned rooms, not because they don't have all the things that life can offer. They just cannot make their inner space comfortable. So when you say Sukha in Ayurveda, we are talking about how to make our inner space comfortable. So when the inner space is comfortable, you can respond better to the outside space. And in fact, what Ayurveda tells is that when your inner space is in the comfort zone, the external environment also automatically changes. We are talking about nature conservation. We want to grow trees, plants, but the violence that you see outside is actually in our minds. If our minds change, nature will also change. This is one of the biggest principles of Charaka Samhita. In another section of Charaka Samhita, there is a chapter called Janapadodvamsa, how human communities destroy themselves through thoughtless living. How by making our inner mind, tense and agitated and very narrow-minded, how by making our inner mind uncomfortable, just by our existence, we destroy the whole universe. Of course, we cannot destroy the universe. We temporarily cause imbalance in the external world. Ultimately, we are the only ones who get destroyed. Once a pralaya happens, the universe will continue its way, but all of us may get wiped out. This is mentioned in Charaka Samhita. So the whole focus is on how to make your inner space comfortable. And for that, we need to have time for our external world and also our inner world. Unless we give time for our inner space, and how much time should be given? So Chaturmasya is a commitment for giving time for your inner space. So in 12 months in a year, 1/3, it becomes 1/3. So 1/3 of your time you are giving for your inner space. Make your inner space comfortable. 2/3 of the year you are allowed to expose yourself to the external world. So this is fair enough, is it not? We have 2/3 of the time for our journey into the external world. 1/3 keep aside for contemplation. Because strengthen your inner world before you meet the external world. Okay, there are some questions. Smita Pradhan is asking, where are we leading in all these ways? Can you please clarify?
No, sir. That time you were saying like we are living in what artificial world where we are not using our intelligence. So my question,
Yes.
this is my question ultimately, like all this industrialization, automation, where is the ultimate goal of human life? Because that way
Right.
people are losing their job, food, these things actually disturbing me. So that was my.
Yes, true, true, true. You know, the thing is, what I have understood is that we talk about destiny and free will. In human life, we have been given absolute freedom. Absolute freedom means freedom to also make mistakes. So I always wondered, why is there a terrorist? Why should there be a criminal? You know, if you want to really become a criminal, it is possible to become a criminal. That is the freedom that we have as human beings. So we have been given the choice to reflect upon our experiences and learn and refine ourselves. So this is the stage in which the whole human civilization is exploring the external world. And I think this is only in the passing. And through the experiences that we are gaining, even COVID-19 is today, I think, a big lesson from nature. We are all being shut up inside. It is the clarion call for a Chaturmasya. We already had several Chaturmasyas in the form of lockdowns, 2 months, 2 months. So when we are not refraining ourselves, we land up in situations which will prompt us to actually change. See, as we cannot meet our ego or our mind directly, our mind will not accept. So even God is hiding because he knows that I'm just being a little humorous here. God knows that there's no point in giving direct advice. Nobody wants direct advice. So indirectly, through the results of our own actions, we reflect, we understand, and we refine. And that is slowly happening in the world. So it is our freedom. What we should know is we should be thankful. I feel when I see people doing all the wrong things, then earlier I used to get upset. I used to feel that this is not fair. But then I suddenly look up or look inside and try to reach out to the ultimate power of the universe and say, you are great because you are given such freedom. Everybody can do whatever they want. So, this is how in our culture we define dharma also. It's very beautifully defined. Veda Vyasa is telling, Shruyadam dharma sarvasam. What is dharma? He's telling, please listen and please understand very, very subtly. Atmana pratikulani paresham na samacharet. Don't do something which you will not like to be done to you, to others. Much, much before the Christian philosophy, this was recorded in the Mahabharata. And there the reason is also told why we should not do something, because you are being given complete freedom. There is no interference from anybody. If I want to go and harm somebody, nobody is going to stop you except human laws and things. You will later have to face a consequence, because in nature every action will lead to a consequence, and from that consequence you may call it punishment, whatever it is. There is no punishment in nature. There is only action and result. When that result doesn't become nice, we call somebody has punished you. So nature is a smile. Nobody is punishing anybody. If you throw the stone up and you stand beneath it, it will come and fall on your head. You cannot blame the stone because it follows the rule of gravity. So what goes up will come down. You have the ability to also stop it from falling. You can do a counteraction. That is why a lot of people keep escaping, but one day they are trapped in the quagmire of their own karmas. So in our Puranas, we have great such criminals turning into great souls and saints overnight. Like the first Kavya called Ramayana also was actually a criminal. The author of Ramayana, past, if you look, he was one of the most dangerous criminals of that time, Ratnakara. And he became Valmiki by the association with the Saptarshis. So it takes a lot of courage to go on the right path. One big problem we have is when we try to correct ourselves, we immediately want others also to correct themselves. We are impatient. We feel why others are not doing. We don't realize that we have spent births doing what they are doing now. The best way to change another person is to change yourself. The Saptarshis had to just have one contact with Ratnakara and he became a Valmiki. This is the power of change. As Gandhiji said, become the change that you want to see in the world. When you change, everything around you changes. So this power of that inner space, this is the cornerstone of our culture. So it is enough if one person, nature is telling, let them do, let them make money, just children, fighting, destroying the whole home before the time the parents come. That is how nature is viewing us. But there will be one person who will change. And that one person can trigger change in everyone else. And that is how the world has moved on. There has been one Buddha, one Rama, one Krishna, not hundreds of them. Nature works that way. And that one person influences. When Buddha became enlightened, he became silent. He became so silent that the gods became worried. Once in a millennium, somebody gets an experience like this. Now, Buddha decides to be silent. How will the world benefit? And then they came, the angels, everybody came to Buddha and told Buddha, please, you have to speak something. Buddha said, those who do not know, even if I speak, they will not understand. And those who know, they do not need my words to understand. So that is why I am silent. And then the angels diplomatically said, oh Buddha, there are some people in between. For their sake, please speak. So it seems those people in between, who had half knowledge, they were the disciples of Buddha. And Buddha spoke very few things. Most of the teachings of Buddha are what his disciples have made up and may have misunderstood, sometimes interpreted differently. So we have different types of Buddhism coming in. Buddha was silent. He was just telling to look inside. His silence came from that inner space. And Chaturmasya is all about going back to this inner space. And there is a very important thing in Kerala, this particular month, July now, is called as the month of Ramayana. Ramasya Ayanam Ramayana. Rama means Atma Rama. Rama means one who is happy with himself, not with anything else. He doesn't need anything from outside to be happy. That is the meaning of the word Ram. So Atma Rama is an abbreviation of the word Atma. So I rejoice in my own existence. This is the goal of our life. Ayanam means the path. The path to reach Rama means the path to reach yourself, where being yourself is the cause of your happiness. So this is the month of Ramayana also in Chaturmasya, when the whole country is practicing this. In Kerala, we are sitting every day evening and reading the whole Ramayana. Why is that? Here you can see a lot of links and connection between Ayurveda practices as well as this spirituality. This is Varsha Ritu, the season of rains, especially in Kerala. And in the rainy season, the Vata dosha will get aggravated according to Ayurveda. The Vata dosha gets aggravated. It's a very tamasic. This is the time when our body's strength is at its weakest. And Vata is aggravated. Vata creates stena buddhi. All adharmic thoughts will come when Vata goes out of balance. So this is the period where your mind needs to be brought into the right path. And also in such heavy rains that you cannot move around. So your mind may become an idle mind, becoming a devil's workshop, especially when Vata is there around and you are in the rains, not physically active, not, everything. Because at this time in Kerala, you cannot even move outside. This is the time when the thoughts of dharma has to be implanted. When we are weakest in our mind, body, and spirit, that is the time the highest thoughts have to be brought in. And this is why during this period, a lot of restrictions. Don't take in any negative influences from the world. That is why in this whole Chaturmasya period, food is restricted. Every month has its own restrictions. I'm not giving a lecture on Chaturmasya, so I'm not going into that. But you can see that the Ayurvedic concept of the Ritucharya, everything is linked. And all our Shastras are linked together. They support one another. And it is important that we study all of them. Ayurveda is not just for Vaidyas. Vaidyas to make money, for patients to get their health. And if patients study Ayurveda, Vaidyas will go out of job actually. So Charaka also tells very clearly to patients, if somebody prescribes a medicine which is not rational, refuse it. That freedom was given to the, yeah. So what we have to understand here is that the Sharira Sthanam, which is the topic of our chapter today, is something which tells us, Sharira means the birth of the body. And the word Shariram indicates that this is going to get destroyed anyway. Shiryade aneneni shariram. So our whole life is almost like, we are rolling up a very heavy stone on the top of the hill and then throwing it down. This is the story of our Sharir. With so much effort, nature is creating this body only to leave it halfway and say, now you get destroyed. And then our downward journey begins. Why are we even given? Why are we? We are very sure, we know that we were not born out of our own will. In fact, when we are born, we are not even aware. After some days, we wake up to a home with our parents, like if we are blessed, otherwise, maybe in an orphanage or maybe on the streets. Whatever it is, and suddenly our awareness comes. We don't know from where we came. And we think that we are this body. So what the Sharira Sthanam is primarily telling us is the story of our Sharir. In fact, to show that the Shariram that we acquire is only making up a part of our journey in life. Today in Ayurvedic colleges, Shariram has been dissected and destroyed and has been subdivided into two topics called Sharira Rachana Vijnanam and Sharira Kriya Vijnanam. This has been one of the biggest tragedies of modern Ayurvedic medical education. Sharira Rachana being anatomy and Sharira Kriya being physiology. Ayurvedic Shariram was a completely different concept. Ityatra Janma Maranam Yata Samyak Udahranam Sharirasya Tatasthanam Shariram Idamukhyade. Here, the entire cycle of the birth and death of the body is completely described. And that is why it is called as Sharira. So, what are the topics of Sharirasthan? First is Srishti Sharira. Our acharyas are telling, how did this body come forth? It has come forth from the universe. The universe as the macrocosm has become the microcosm. How? Everything that is there in the macrocosm is present in the microcosm. This is what Ayurveda teaches first. how the macrocosm becomes the microcosm, and how every microcosmic entity reflects the whole macrocosm. Not only Krishna can show the whole world in his mouth. If we are determined, we can also open our mouths and show to Yashodas outside that the whole world is inside us, the whole universe is inside us. Purushoyam Loka Samhita. Every atom that makes the universe makes us also. If you go deep inside our own being, we connect to the universe. We get lost in the whole universe. In fact, this is what our Acharya has found. It is through our inner journey. If we go inside, we connect to the whole universe. If we go outside, we get disconnected from the whole universe. Everything looks separate when you look outside. When you look inside, everything looks united. So this inner journey, guiding us through to this inner journey, is the purpose of Sharirastha. And Srishti Shariram is first explained. You know, a modern medical student. I was once watching, my wife was watching a TV serial, a mentalist. It's an interesting thing because mentalist. So I was moving around. I don't usually get time to sit and watch any serial completely. I will have to move away. So I sometimes it so happens I'm there at the right moment. So here was a scene. In fact, I had even taken screenshots of that serial and kept it because it helped me to give support to something that I've always been saying. So there, the mentalist and is looking at a medical doctor and saying that this is a fake doctor. And he was asked, how can you be so sure? He said, this doctor has compassion. A medically trained doctor in the United States cannot have compassion. Why? It's not a joke. It's a very serious, and they are talking, they're basing. He says, because the moment you get into medical school, you are thrown a dead body in front of you and a heap of books. You start studying medicine by seeing a lifeless dead body, and you become, uh, insensitive to death, dying, and so on. This is what I have also, I liked this statement because I always talk about the need to revive the concept of Shariram in Ayurveda and completely change the syllabus. Because a medical student starts by dissecting a dead body. In Ayurvedic, Shariram starts by seeing a new life. And that is why I am very appreciative of what Dr. Nutan is doing, bringing Garbha Samskara Yoga and Ayurveda together. Because when you see a new life, just imagine a medical student starting the study of medicine by seeing childbirth rather than dissecting a dead body. How much more would you respect life? When you see that the birth of a new child, a baby, is a miracle, it is a miracle that happens. The universe is coming in front of you. Yeah, that's very important. We need to. So I understand Shariram. I divide Shariram into certain topics based on the Ayurvedic logic. First is Srishti Shariram. So this part alone, I will just share a slide. Just this part. Because for topics which having a spiritual implication, I don't like to usually. I need to be screen sharing to be enabled. Just for a moment, because this part alone might be helpful to show a slide.
Just a minute, sir. I'm doing that. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I completely follow you, sir. Even current, today we are starting with Ayurveda anatomy course. So same pattern which you emphasize, that is going to be continue in the same format.
Okay, that's so nice to know.
Yeah.
We need people who really, propagate this idea because it is life transforming. That is what is important. Education that does not transform your personality It's not education, because it creates monsters. With more knowledge, they become more dangerous.
Yes.
So what Ayurveda education is all about is transforming personality first, and then filling it with knowledge that can benefit the world. So here we have Ayurvedic Sharirasthanam is not divided into anatomy and physiology. It is divided into these topics: Srishti Shariram, how the universe came into being, and from the universe, how this new life came. So when you see a childbirth, Ayurveda student is seeing the whole universe transforming into a microcosm. All the atoms, elements, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, amino acids, the nucleic acids, everything is the same when you look at it. We are all same in terms of the ingredients. Only our configuration is different. It's like children playing with building blocks, the same building blocks you give them, they make very, very different shapes and figures. So if you go into the source, this unity of life is what an Ayurveda student begins the study by appreciating this fact, that all life emerges from the same source. If you were to break down an individual into its parts, it's all the same. We would get the same atom if I deconstruct myself or yourself, anybody around, we get the same atoms: carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, all the same elements, trace elements. Everything is same. But still you can see that uniqueness. It's configured in a different way. So how this Garbhachariram is the next thing. How the macrocosm brings those elements together in the womb and then, nurtures a new life. In Sanskrit, the word nayan actually is nava. Nava means new. Even in English, it is now, new. After navam, it is shunyam. And the 10th day or the 10th month is the birth. That is why we have Navaratri also. Navaratri is like a pregnancy, where we are undergoing a rebirth again into a higher consciousness. So Nava is 9. Vijaya Dashami is the 10th day of rebirth. So Garbhashariram deals with the whole development of the embryo, how to nurture it. Conscious birthing was a very important aspect in our tradition. Because this goal of human life, this had to be transmitted. Because in human life, it is not just the genes that are transmitted, it's also the awareness that needs to be transmitted. The GPS software has to be transmitted from the previous generation to next generation, so that all the knowledge that is also necessary for the next generation to move even forward. Our acharyas always used to say, the Charaka Samhita is, I don't know how many of you may have appreciated, that maybe, but looking at it from that angle, it's a textbook of a student. The notes of a student. Just imagine the notes of a student became the most celebrated textbook in Ayurveda. Just look at the teacher, forward thinking. The next generation is important. Today we have Gray's Anatomy. First author is still, it is known by his name. But in Ayurveda, it got forwarded. Sushruta Samhita is the name of the disciple. So let the disciple become better than me. That was the wish of the Guru. Let the next generation become better than me. And that transferring of that samskara, that is what makes human procreation and conception completely different. And the coming together of the male and the female is also a sacred process. It is Agni Somiyan. It is Agni Tattva and Soma Tattva coming together. And it is not just a physical coming together, it is a psychological coming together. I always used to say the Sindura when it's being put on the woman's head. At some time, I also got influenced by this modern way. I said, this is, making them do all this is kind of male dominance. Why women should be forced to do all these things? But later I understood the significance of this act was the opposite. A male is like Soma in an Agni matrix. The male reproductive element is Saumya. It is very watery. Female reproductive element is Agneya or fairy. But the personality itself is different. The male personality is more aggressive, female personality is generally. I'm just making a general thing, everything, softness and all that. So one has the seed of the other in each gender has the seed of the other. Now, when the male puts this sindura on the head of the female, and it is important that it is put in the upward direction. What the male is promising is that I will awaken the Agni in you. I will make you more aggressive and more independent. That significance is totally lost today. The male would actually promise to empower the female to become more aggressive. And the female is telling, we'll put the sandal below that on the head of the husband and say, I will make you more calmer, I will make you more gentle. So both personalities become more complete. There was a tradition in Tamil Nadu when a male becomes a sannyasi, they call him Amma. They call him mother. A male is called, even in today in Tamil Nadu, in Erode, there is a male saint whom everybody refers to as Amma. Means a male becomes complete when the motherhood in him is awakened. And a female becomes complete when the fatherhood in them awakens, or the masculine principle in them awakens. Marriage is a sacred institution where this great exchange is made. And in that process, only when the male and female creates this balance, the child that they create will also be balanced in personality. That was the whole idea. We don't want to create imbalances. So just like the sun and the moon, come together and create a balance of these things. And in this way, what happens is this is the way transcending your gender identity is also the way to a higher spiritual awareness. So the purpose of marriage is not procreation. If that was the purpose, there was no need, to have marriage at all, because animals don't marry anyway. Procreation is not the goal. There is something higher. There is a self-evolution that also happens through this. So this is very important when you look at Ayurvedic Shariram, gender roles, and Vivaham itself in Sanskrit means special purpose vehicle. As we say in the language of law, we create the special purpose vehicle for achieving a certain goal. And unless we have that fulfillment, marriage will never be successful if this higher purpose is not understood. And this education needs to be brought in. So Srishti Shariram, Garbha Shariram includes all this knowledge. We need counseling before marriage. Why two individuals are committed in a particular way? It is because, that through that moments of intimacy, this great exchange of the Agni Soma Tattva happens. And that brings out the individual. And you are a sannyasi. If you can awaken your inner feminine nature and balance it, you become a complete person. So sannyasi is a complete person. That is why Grihastha Ashrama leads to sannyasa. So both, you go beyond gender. So there is no, I don't believe in gender equality and all that. Feminine is feminine. They're different. But there's no question of equality here. How can two different things? You cannot say, orange and apple are equal. They are unique. Both are great, but both serve different purposes. So there is no question of, and equality comes when you transcend gender identity. It's never by asserting gender identity. That can only create conflict. That is the biggest challenge today. So in Ayurveda, there is this deep insight into all aspects of life, of procreation from a very deep philosophical perspective. And this is all dealt with in Srishti Shariram, Garbha Shariram, how a Garbha comes into being. And then the whole body. We go from subtle to the from sukshma to sthula, not from sthula to sukshma. This is a very big difference. In modern medicine, we see the sthula first. For them, what is most tangible is the reality. That's why the dead body is the first. We go from inside to the outside. So whatever is there inside is discussed first. And then we come to the outside of the physical body. So dosha shariram, dosha is not visible. The tridoshas. I'm not, because we cannot discuss dosha here today. Our focus is on how Sharira Sthanam gives you a platform to engage in Chaturmasya Vratas more effectively. Why we are, so that is what I'm focusing on. But I'm sure many of you must have, almost all of you should be knowing about what doshas are because you are studying with Dr. Nutan. So that is taken care of. So I'm just trying to, and then we have Marma Sharira. Again, this is the uniqueness of Ayurveda. This is not anatomy, physiology. Then we have Pramana Sharira, where we measure the various, aspects of the body. We have tried to understand the Sthula and Sukshma in all perfection. Then we come to the anatomical aspects, which is called as Sankhya Sharira, where we count the various organs. And then the most important thing, Prakriti Shariram, why we are what we are. What is our constitution? So all these ingredients that are common to all of us get configured in a particular way and gives us our unique identity. Like a fingerprint, there is no two persons. And unless you know your uniqueness, you won't find meaning in life. Most of the time, our major problem for our sorrow is that we are not happy with ourselves. We don't accept ourselves. So Ayurveda tells us that once you know who you are, your physical constitution, your mental constitution, and you begin to appreciate, yourself for what you are, that is when you begin to live life. So Prakriti Sharira is very important. So Sharira Sthanam is telling you how that whole microcosm creates this platform for you, configures you, creates all that environment for your consciousness to manifest and puts you in a very unique position. And understanding that unique position that you are in, when you know that there is nobody like me in this universe, this is what we must understand and rejoice in that uniqueness and say, I can therefore, my life is my signature. My life should be my signature of that I leave behind in this world. And then everything will become charmful. You will become more charmful to the universe the moment you discover yourself. No amount of makeup or no amount of TikTok videos can make you go viral. You can go viral just by loving yourself, just by appreciating yourself. Your presence will have a charm that nobody can resist. This is the inner beauty. The inner beauty is inside. Socrates was a very ugly person, very, very ugly. But he had this inner charm. So a lot of women wanted to marry him. And Socrates said, my life is for the world. I don't want to get it locked up with one or two individuals. But there was another interesting story. There was a person who could read other people's face and predict their character. So that person came near Socrates one day, and Socrates, looking at his ugly face, this man began to say, here, this fellow is very mean. And he said a lot of negative things about Socrates. And his disciples became very angry. What a stupid fellow. You don't know this person. He's such a kind. There's nobody like him in the whole of Greece. And you are insulting him with these words. As they started running towards this person, Socrates called them. Said, stop. Every single word, what he said is true. He is seeing through my body, my past. And what my body is reflecting is what I was earlier. But I have changed. And it is that change that has come inside. That is why nature brings this contrast. What is inside is more important than the physical. So, although Socrates had the remnants of a bad past, He had transformed himself so much that even through his ugly countenance, the beauty of his inner self, you know, just broke open and charmed everyone around him. You spend some hours with Socrates and you just cannot help being charmed. Unless you are really very cruel. And unfortunately, such people were also there in Greece at that time. And they made him to drink the hemlock poison, which he very happily drank. So he was already an Atma Rama. He was happy with himself. So that is the way. That is the only way that we can come out of the problems of this world. And Sharira Sthanam of Charaka Samhita is giving us this platform, telling us that even when you know your body, it is Ayurveda is like a mirror, I would say once. It's like a mirror. Because if you look at Ayurveda, you see yourself. That is a problem. And you may want to run away in the first time because you have a wrong idea of yourself. And when you start seeing the mirror, oh, this is not the me I want to see. Ayurveda tells, no, 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 please stay back. Stay back and see. And once you really see who you are, you will begin to like yourself. Come on, there's nobody else like you. And this is the first message Ayurveda is giving. Once you know who you are, it's like you got the key for your life. Now you can open up all the pathways that you are expected to tread in your present life. If you don't know yourself, that is why Prakriti is so important. Today, Prakriti has become a fad. I'm a Vata type, Pitta type, or Kapha type. It is not. You know, Ayurveda says that you cannot put people into boxes. These are all Vata people. These are Ayurveda is out of box thing. First, come out of these boxes. There is no box that you can hold you. You don't fit into any box. That is Prakriti. Because two Vata Prakritis are not the same. Vata Pitta Kapha is just telling some tendencies. But no, even two Vata people are not the same. Any Ayurveda physician knows that. So you are you. You cannot be put into any box. And don't worry that you are not fitting into anything. By not fitting into anything, you can become yourself. First, have that courage to be yourself. And then evolve from there, because that is the starting point in your life. So after telling you the starting point, which is your constitution, Ayurveda is taking you to the journey. And what Ayurveda tells in Sharira Sthanam, the journey of the Shariram is very, very straightforward. It will go up and it will go down and back to the earth. If you think you are the body, then that is your life. Make merry, be happy. Until the end of the life, do whatever you want. And with the death of the body, everything is gone. This is one way to look at your Sharira. And we had people like that, Charvakas, who Charvaka means Charuvaka, Vacha. They tell very pleasing things. So, Yavat Jivet, Sukham Jivet, just as long as you are alive, be happy. Rinam Kritva Gridam Pivet. Even go and borrow money and drink ghee. Or today maybe eat pizza or pasta or whatever. And Coke. Or beer or whatever it is, don't worry, because Bhasmi Bhurasya Dehasya Punaragamanam Kuta. Once his body becomes ashes, it's not going to come back again. No dead person has ever come back throughout recorded history. So when you're dead, everything is over. So live happily. When you are just about to be caught, shoot yourself. What is that? This is also a philosophy. So when you say Shariram, what Ayurveda is telling us that it is not trying to force you to any system of thought, but it guides you. It tells you this is one extreme. This is one way in which you can think about life. If you look at your Shariram, we are all inclined. I'm sure many of us would have thought at some point in our life, is this not what reality is? I am doing all the trouble, doing all the dharma. Look at me, I am in poverty. I'm denying myself all the pleasures I secretly want to enjoy. And what is the result? So this confusion will be there. Ayurveda discusses this. Sutrasthanam itself, Paralokeshana, the world hereafter. Why is that important? Ayurveda tells that this Shastra is not for this life alone. It is also for the other life. And is there another life? This is a question that Ayurveda asks. And that is what Sharirasthanam is also telling us. Because when you say Shariram, we think we are being taught about our present physical body. No. Sharirasthanam is telling us what was there before and what will be there after. In between is this, what you see, the birth and death of your Sharira. What is there before the birth and what will be there after your birth. When you know that, your life, that whole mindscape or vision about life completely changes. And then you begin to live life. You are part, this life is a continuity, anubandha of a past life. And this is only the beginning again of a new life. Life continues perpetually. And you are just a moment in that continuity. This life is only a moment in that continuity. This body is only one of the many bodies that you have inhabited. And now Ayurveda says it's up to you. Ayurveda tries to give you the rational reasoning behind this, why we should accept it. But it doesn't go as far as Bhagavad Gita. Okay, I think. And then finally comes Vikriti Shariram. Vikriti Shariram means death. So from Srishti to Vikriti, this is the journey of the physical body. And the question is there something beyond this physical? So this is the paradox of Sharirasthanam. The name says that we are studying about the body, but the subject is telling us actually that Shastra is telling us what is beyond the body. So when you study Sharirasthanam, we understand that we have dimensions beyond. Beyond the body is the mind. Beyond the mind is our own self, inner self. I like the word self because when you say soul, you look at something outside. When I say spirit, something going up. But when I say self, I look inside. So at the core of your personality is the core of your consciousness. So this introversion is the way of Ayurveda. Even when you are interacting with the external world, you must interact in such a way that your mind goes inside. So the namaste is also that. You move with a sweeping action, do the namaste and bring it close to your heart. You're saying all this experience from the external world, let it take me closer to my own self. When you study yoga, you will say yoga is union of Jivatma with Paramatma. And you may sit back with the feeling that you have said some great philosophy. But the fact is that it doesn't enter into our minds what this means, Jivatma and Paramatma. I have realized over the years that yoga means an appointment with your own inner self. You cannot exist without your own self. If you're not allowed to sleep for a few days, you know what happens? You become a mad person. Am I right? If you are deprived of sleep for just a few days, you will go mad. Just like a lover pines for, his partner. We are pining for our own self. In sleep, we meet ourselves. It's a secret meeting because when we come out, we are brainwashed. We don't even know whom we met when we were asleep. We have met our own self. Sleep is an appointment with our own self. If the meeting is secret, we call it sleep. If the meeting is done openly, then it becomes meditation. So sleep and meditation are very similar. In meditation, we are aware. We know we are with ourselves. In sleep, we do not know. But sleep is as powerful as meditation. Sleep can see many things that happen in meditation happen in sleep also. Your heart rate comes down, your brain waves go down, except that it is a little bit more tamasic than, yes, Sushupti. Sushupti is the sleep. Thank you, Ashwin. Sushupti is the, not the Swapnavastha where our mind is active. Jagrat Swapna, Sushupti Nam, Sakshi Bhuti. Sakshi, that Sakshi, the fourth state is that's consciousness of ourself. So the whole goal of life, according to Ayurveda, our philosophy is very simple. Just center, just get an appointment with your own self. And even when we are reaching out, we are doing that for this appointment only. You know what happens when we have a desire? In fact, yoga emerged when desire, yes, brahmacharya. Brahmacharya is the path of Brahman, where brahmacharya means not being trapped by the external world. It doesn't just mean sexuality alone. Any sensual pleasure which traps you, like the Ashwamedha Yajna, when you are the king leaves a horse, and anybody who captures the horse, he will go and fight, and then he becomes a samrat. The Ashwa represents our sensual energy, the horse. So every time your sense organs are captured by sense objects, you go and defeat it. And when no sense object can capture your sense organs, you become a Chakravarti. That is Ashwamedha Yajna actually. So this was the process. So bringing your mind inside is the ultimate goal. And this in Ayurveda, we say is a meeting with ourselves. So what happens when we get an ice cream, for example? An ice cream that we have longed for so much, or a crisp fried chicken that we want to bite. Till we get that into our mouth, our mind is very disturbed, full of thoughts. But the moment we get it, at that time, the thoughts stop for a moment. And we think that biting that chicken piece is the cause of our happiness. But the cause of our happiness is thoughtlessness. You can find that if thoughts are still there in your mind, you won't enjoy that chicken even if you were to bite it. Am I right? It is only when your mind is free of thoughts that you can enjoy anything outside. Only when you are in connected with your own self, everything becomes enjoyable. So that is why Patanjali said, Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha. We are trying to become yogis when we eat chicken or when we go behind something which we like. And when we get that object, at that moment, we are a yogi. But it is only for a few seconds. Without yoga, without being connected to ourselves, we cannot survive. Addiction is also yoga in the wrong way. Drug addiction. Somewhere, somehow we want to stop our thoughts. Every engagement with the external world is to stop our thoughts. And we say peace, peace, peace. Shanti, shanti, shanti. Trivitha Dukha, Adhyatmika Shanti, Adi Bhaudika Shanti, and Adi Daivika Shanti. We don't want the non-self anywhere. Everything is self. So when we want to do this consciously, it becomes yoga. When we try to stop our thoughts consciously without depending on an external object, then we call that as yoga. And Ayurveda is trying to tell us how we can do this step by step, stage by stage. Starting from where we are. That is the beauty of Ayurveda. In yoga, if you are not prepared, that is why Yama Niyama is mentioned. Most people will fail. Without Yama Niyama, we are going into yoga today. Without adequate Yama Niyamas. It is not easy to enter into yoga for majority of us because we have led a sensual life. In today's world, it is very difficult. And Ayurveda is for those people. Ayurveda comes down to our level. That is why it is called Ayurveda Avataranam. Ayurveda has come down. For yoga, you have to go up. Ayurveda has come down to our level. Wherever we are, whatever stage we are, If you want, only condition Ayurveda says you must be wanting a long life and you must be wanting to reach a higher goal of life. If these two conditions are there, you can study Ayurveda. Ayukkamayamana dharmartha sukha sadhana Ayurvedopadesheshu vitheya paramadana. And the first two verses in Ashtanga Hridayam is also teaching us standard is attention. How to be relaxed and alert at the same time. That is how we must lead our life. So this, I would also like to state that Ayurveda is a preparation to yoga. Ayurveda is actually a preparation to yoga. And there is no other text like the Charaka Samhita which explains that. Etat mukter mokshasya darshidam. I'm reading from the Sharirasthana. This is the way for freedom. This is the way for the ultimate goal of life. Etat tadegamayanam mukter mokshasya darshidam tattva smritibalam yena gadana punaragada. So this is the only way, the way of no return, where you don't come back to more misery, but you go forward to higher and higher levels of happiness. It is to show that the Sharirasthanam of Charakam has been created. And the first chapter is called Kathita Purushiyam. Kathita Purusho Dhiman Dhatu Bhedena Vidyate. So it is about consciousness that the first chapter talks about. So now I'll try to give a snapshot of Sharirasthanam and try to bring it in context and try to highlight how Sharirasthanam of Charaka Samhita is actually leading us to this inner journey by telling us that we have a body and that the body is a tool for us to turn our minds inward. So body should be used in such a way that our mind turns inward, not the other way around. And how to do that, how to use our bodies so that our mind moves inward is the whole subject of Sharirasthanam. I don't know if this makes sense. Any questions? Yes. Falguni said, you were asking something.
Sir, you were actually that time talking about how the yoga emerged when desires, and then you actually stopped because of the question you asked about on brahmacharya. So if
Right. Yeah, I'll clarify that again. Yes. Okay. Thank you for pointing that out. You know, when I said yoga was discovered, yoga was discovered when people analyzed this experience of a desire, what a desire creates. A desire is a disturbance in the mind which can be removed only when it is fulfilled, is it not? But the problem is that as soon as the desire is fulfilled, the thoughts come back again. Now it's a new desire. So the very object that made you happy, so somebody likes jalebi, I give him one jalebi, he's very happy. I give him 2, 3, 4. After the 5th jalebi, he will say, I don't want it anymore. I hate jalebis. So then I ask, just now only you told you love jalebis. That was 10 minutes ago. After eating 6 jalebis, I don't like it anymore. So it is very clear that the joy is not in the object. So you go back to the moment when you felt happy when you ate the jalebi. At that moment, nothing was there in your mind because you and that experience alone was there. Is that clear? So when you analyze experience, you see the seed of yoga there. The external world is there for us to discover this. By repeated experience, we will reflect and we'll understand, oh, the sense objects are not giving the happiness. That is a workshop. Maya is nature's workshop. It is nothing illusion and all that we say. No. It is a tool that is there in nature so that we learn. So we are allowed to enjoy, go into the world with all freedom. You are only rest. That's what nature has told. in human, Brahmavaloga Dishanam Manujam Vidhaya Param Mudamapadeva from Bhagavata, after creating all the trees, birds, animals, creator was not happy. So he was thinking, why? Oh, the reason is I have put them all under my control. That's why I'm not happy. They do only what I allow them to do. Now let me create another being whom I will give complete freedom. And the freedom also to rediscover me. Brahmavaloga Dishadam. And let me see if this being will make a choice and choose the highest instead of the lowest. And that is the story of humanity. We are still in conflict. Whether I should go for the lower or the higher. That conflict will keep happening and nobody is going to force you. If you say, I want the lowest, say, okay. Yat gatvana nivartande tadhama paramam mama. Yeah. That is, at the time you ate the first jalebi, your mind was empty of thoughts, right? At that moment, no thought. Whether it be jalebi or ice cream or chicken, it's the same. This is mental conditioning. This is what happens in marriage also. If you are not deep, that sensory experiences will last only for a short period. Even with people, it is the same. Unless you go deeper, nothing will last. So the joy is not in the object, the joy is in our own mind. That is what I was trying to point out. And yoga means this understanding. That is why Patanjali said, Yoga chitta vritti nirodha. When you quieten the thoughts, tada drashtu swarupe avasthana. Vritti sarupya midaratra. This is how the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, it's very deep psychology. Just tells us. So you can try to stop your thoughts. In fact, we are trying to stop our thoughts all the time. And the only way we know that is to go and lick the ice cream or bite the jalebi or, crunch on munch on a piece of chocolate. This is the only way we know to stop our thoughts. And what happens? You eat all this and then you have other problems. You get disease, you get sick, you cannot even move around. But yoga, no side effect. You get all the bliss you want without any cost also. You don't have to go to a shop. Yoga is available right in where you are. I can sit here and just make myself happy. But don't think that yoga is thinking about jalebi, because once you think about any sense object, then without getting that, your mind will not be satisfied. So yoga is a method of harmonizing the body and mind to a point where thoughts just stop. This we call as silence, inner silence, which means that in our mind, it's called the noise to signal ratio. Our mind is like an old radio where you are trying to find the radio station, but you hear everything else other than the radio signals, all crackling sounds and disturbances. A silent mind doesn't mean that you are not talking or that you don't have any thoughts, but there is no noise in your mind. I hope you got the concept. The noise comes from emotional turbulences. So I went to a guru and he said he's a man of silence, and found that guru is always talking. He's not stopping at all. Then I said, how can you say this person is silent? And then somebody sitting there said, see, just sit quiet. When he talks, we become silent if you just tune into him. So what was coming out of his mind is just a pure reflection of his deep inner self. So it is not external silence. When we do Mauna Vrata, the whole idea is to create the inner silence, not the external silence. A lot of people, many criminals I have seen, they're very silent. They don't speak much externally. But if you look inside, their mind is very noisy. Most of the people who are Many big things are going on in their mind, they become silent. In fact, if there is nothing inside, many people, they are very talkative and very innocent because there's nothing inside. It's very empty, all empty inside. Yeah, we are all criminals and saints at the same time. There is the Asura and the Deva inside us. It's up to us to decide who we want to be. And this is the beauty of this whole concept. And in Charaka Samhita, Atulya Gotriyam, next chapter. This is to preserve the Y chromosome that we created. People from the same Gotra should not marry. So again, that's a big science. We need not going into that. It is in Atulya Gotriyam that our dimensions beyond the physical body has been clearly explained. Many of us think that it is the self that is moving. Atma moves from one Sharira to the other. Ayurveda says no. Atma cannot move. When you are dead, your soul leaves your body. The body disconnects from the soul. Soul cannot go anywhere. The self is everywhere. So it doesn't leave your body and go. Your body cannot hold on to yourself. That is what happens. He left the body is not a correct way of expressing. The body left the self. The body disintegrated, unable to hold the consciousness anymore. It is a problem of the body, not the problem of the self. So when I say electricity is not running in my machine, it doesn't mean that it is a problem with electricity. It is a problem with the machine that electricity is not manifesting. So self does not move anywhere. Your mind gets displaced from one location to the other. That is what happens after death. There is no ghost according to Ayurveda. No ghost can come in white sari or, with a lot of smoke from behind and bottom. This is not possible. When you are dead, you are in the mental world, not in the physical world anymore. But Ayurveda says it's possible to connect to these beings at a mental level. And mind is beyond time and space. So that's very difficult to imagine. In the mental world, you can get displaced in one moment from India to America. You don't, for a physical body, you need visa, passport, everything. But if you die and you become an American, you can bypass all customs officers. You will be born in an American body. In split of a second, you can displace yourself in time and space. Mind is beyond time and space. So we talk about dead people in the concept of our present mind and space. That is why time and space, that's why the problem. So we are coming to the end. I wanted this to be a very spontaneous discussion. I did not plan to have, because this is the process of kindling contemplation, not passing some information. Chaturmasya is the time for contemplation. And I would like to go to one important chapter in Charaka Samhita, and with that we conclude, which clearly explains the concept of Chaturmasya. This chapter is called Purusha Vichayam Shariram. So in Purusha Vijayam Shariram, Charaka is telling this whole Upanishadic idea of Pravritti and Nivritti Marga. Shankaracharya, when he writes a commentary on Bhagavad Gita, he begins by saying, Dvidho hi vedokto marga, pravritti rupo nivritti rupascha. And this is the essential teaching. Pravritti means going out to the external world. That's what we are doing. By nature, we are all forced to move in the pravritti marga. And that pravritti perpetuates further pravritti. Pravritti means going out. And it's a circle. Pravritti is a vrittam. You go in circles again and again, again and again. There's no end to this. And you can find you have made a mess of your life at one stage. This is where I should be going. So pravritti nivritti is going inside. That is also in circles. But then it takes you to your own self. So there are only two possibilities in human life. going out and coming back in. And we need both. Without going out, you cannot come inside. That's the whole Leela of this creation. We are thrown outside so that we come back inside. And if we don't understand this, we get lost outside. That is the Laukika life. The pravritti that does not bring us back home is Laukika life. Without the pravritti, we do not get the maturity to come back inside. And that is why we need Shastra. So living the pravritti life and coming back inside. And Chaturmasya is the time of coming back inside. So if we divide our whole year into 8 months for pravritti and 4 months for nivritti, and if we keep repeating this exercise over a period of few years, we will gain that maturity. And then it doesn't matter whether we are outside or inside. Everything becomes one. That idea of inside outside is gone. Sarvalokam atmani atmanam cha sarvaloke samamanupashyata satya buddhi samutpadide. This is the core teaching of Sharirasthana. Sarvalokam atmani, seeing the whole world inside me, and atmanam cha sarvaloke, seeing myself in the whole world. I break this distinction of pravritti and nivritti. There is no inner, there is no outer. So there is no going out or there is no going inside. I become one with the universe. This is the goal of all Indian teaching. We are one. There is only one consciousness. Sam gachadhvam. That is what the Rigveda ends, the mantra of unity, the song of unity. Sam gachadhvam, move together. Sam vadhadhvam, speak together. Samvo manamsi janatam. Let all our minds unite into that one single consciousness. Deva bhagam yatha purve sanjanana upasade. And then this whole life, our life will become a yajna. And if one person discovers this, we can transform the whole world. This is beyond religion. This is beyond creed. This is beyond caste. It is the clarion call of emancipation of humanity. And in yoga, we emancipate ourselves and we emancipate the whole world. And Ayurveda is that knowledge of life which beckons you to this great journey of self-transformation. Even while it tells there is no hurry, if you want to play, please play. But when you're ready, it's a serious journey. And once you come back in, you'll never be allowed to go outside again. So go. The Lord is waiting. Krishna says, I will wait anytime. Because if you want to take 10,000 years, live in the world, enjoy. Because when you come back inside, I don't want you to go back out again. Because that is infinite time. So that is the patience of supreme consciousness. Allowing us to enjoy the small things in life so that we discover and value something higher. And when we get that, we will not leave it because we know what is bhauma, is anitya. Once we know what is anitya, then we value what is nitya. And understanding this nitya vastu vivekam, that is the goal of human life. And Ayurveda is taking us towards a journey. It's much more than a medical system. And I conclude here and thank once again Dr. Nutan and all those who participated for creating some moments of contemplation in our busy lives. Namaste.
Thank you so much, sir, taking time out from your work and giving us this mesmerizing moments. Each sentence of yours is like we are not able to just distract anywhere. So I guess everybody has that feeling and they are commenting. And we will continue this contemplation tomorrow as well, same time. And I request if you want to really absorb the knowledge what Dr. Ram Manohar wants us to take it ahead. So knowledge, like sir said, knowledge happens when we contemplate more. So I always say that Shravana, we did Shravana now. So it's a time for us to do manana, and then it will become part of us. Nidhi dhyasa, intense desire will be generated with this knowledge. So please write one summary and send us, so it will be great for summarizing our last session. What you say, sir? Is it good
Yes, surely,
advice?
surely.
Yes.
Yes,
So
yes, 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 yes.
because just
Knowledge,
listening, yes, sir.
yeah, knowledge is something which only we can obtain from inside. So in olden days, the teaching, they say silent.
Yes.
What you learn from outside is not knowledge. What you get from inside alone is the true knowledge. What you get from outside only facilitates. So manana nididhyasa is
Yes.
the
Yes.
approach.
So whoever will send it, we will definitely try to appreciate with some kind of token of love from AYG Academy. Thank you so much, sir. Without wasting much time, let's conclude with the prayer. 3 rounds of Om together. So close your eyes, all of you. Silence yourself. Let us begin the prayer, chanting Om. Inhale. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Gently open your eyes and you can drop your question so that we can keep on for the discussion later on in our discourse. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Bye-bye. Closing the meeting. Thank you, all of you, for participation.